So we're here at the site of Philippi, and we're at a very unique spot. One of these things you don't notice until you even get here is we were driving in last night to the site of Philippi. We noticed signs pointing to a village called Lydia. Well, if you know anything about the story of Paul when he comes to Philippi in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 16, you know that Lydia plays a very prominent role. She's a seller of purple. She becomes the first convert, basically, on the European side of the continent. And really, the church of Philippi starts with Lydia's conversion. So it was interesting to drive into here, see a village called Lydia, and then there's an entire church up here to Lydia, and we're standing at a shrine to Lydia at the place where tradition has that she was baptized. So I went back and read the story, and it says basically that Lydia opened her heart to the gospel and accepted Christ. And then it says, after she was baptized, of course, she invites Paul into her house, says, "You've got to stay with us." But there's that phrase in there that simply says, after Lydia was baptized. We don't really consider what happened at that baptism, because the Bible just said after she was baptized. But of course, they didn't go to a church with a baptistry. They would have come right back down to this river where it says Paul originally went on the Sabbath and met Lydia to begin with. This is a natural spot for her to be baptized in, is right at this same river. And so tradition has it that we're at the spot where Lydia was baptized. And it's just one of those interesting tidbits that kind of outside of the Bible, there's this whole tradition here, whether you accept it or whether you think otherwise, it's a tourist trap or whatever, like it doesn't matter. It's another one of these ideas that the symbolism of this spot commemorates this event that the Bible just briefly mentions. But there's this whole area now that commemorates that event. So one other story I want to talk about is at breakfast this morning, the hotel owner where we're staying basically started talking to us about the site of Philippi, and he said, "Oh, you've got to go to Lydia." And he said, "Do you know what happened at the site of Lydia's baptism?" And we said, "No, tell us." And he said, "So that is also the traditional spot where the myth of Persephone and Corey are pulled down to the underworld. It was said to happen at that river." And it was fascinating to see our hotel owner sit there and say, so you have to understand what Paul was doing. He was covering the predominant myth of the day. This river symbolized this is where Persephone and Corey were pulled to the underworld. And Paul said, by choosing to baptize Lydia at that same spot, he said Paul's basically rewriting the narrative. In fact, his words were he's covering the culture because he's introducing Christianity, and he said, this is the new story that we're going to go with. And he basically changes the whole narrative around this river. And I thought that was fascinating. That's the kind of stuff you pick up when you travel to a spot like that you can't even read in commentaries or study guides or anything like that. So hope to bring you more of that kind of insight.